Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're opening up a stack of sources that, honestly, they confront a hidden leadership crisis.
Mm,
And it's not a crisis of, technology or strategy. It's a crisis of neglect.
right.
The conventional wisdom always tells us that influence flows from your title, your position, the brilliance of your quarterly presentation.
Sure, the hard metrics.
Exactly. But what our sources argue is that true long-term failure happens really quietly, beneath the surface, when the fundamental engine of any human organization relationships is neglected.
And what's fascinating here, and I think what really jumped out, is that we often file relationships under like soft skills.
Right.
It's something you deal with when there's an HR problem or maybe for the holiday party. But the core argument we distilled is decisive. Leadership is fundamentally a function of connection, not control. And the quality of your leadership will never rise above the quality of your relationships. That's a challenging, sometimes painful realization for a lot of high-performing professionals.
That statement is, well, it's pretty provocative. Because if relationships are the hard currency of leadership, it means a lot of highly successful, task-oriented leaders might actually be building their empires on sand.
That's the risk, absolutely.
So our mission today is to unpack why this relational depth is now a strategic advantage, especially in our complicated, decentralized world. We're going to draw on some enduring models of influence and hopefully translate some ancient wisdom into modern strategy.
And pull out some practical, actionable tools for building people, not just quarterly outcomes.
Right. Let's jump right into the definition of this crisis. The sources describe this slow organizational decay that happens when we just prioritize tasks over people. You get compliance, yes, but commitment, it just dies.
And think about that for yourself. For you, the listener, what happens internally when you feel like you're just a means to an end?
Oh, it's immediate.
Trust things, right? Motivation becomes purely transactional. And critically, conversations. They grow guarded. People start doing only what is explicitly required.
The bare minimum.
Exactly. They hold back their discretionary effort, their creativity, their insights, their energy, and ultimately what they're truly capable of.
We see organizations filled with these brilliant leaders who just struggle to build genuine morale or develop talent beyond, basic task performance.
And the failure, as our sources point out, happens so quietly. It's long before the P&L reflects it. It happens the moment people feel unseen, unheard, or used.
It really strikes me that this kind of relational failure it feels hyper relevant right now. I mean, we're all dealing with hybrid teams, the isolation of digital work, and just this persistent emotional fatigue.
Absolutely.
So why is managing connections so much harder in this contemporary landscape?
Because distance makes neglect so much easier.
Yeah.
In this era of, hybrid work and just digital overload, relationships become fragile almost by default. You can so easily mistake a bunch of rapid-fire Slack messages for genuine communication or a weekly status update for actual connection.
That's a great point.
So in this landscape, that relational foundation isn't optional anymore. It is the competitive edge. Organizations falter not from a lack of high-level strategy, but because that interpersonal trust has just been neglected.
And when talent is so mobile and loyalty is fragile.
That's when leaders who prioritize deep connection create the kind of stickiness and psychological safety that translates directly into accelerated execution. This isn't soft. It's a strategic firewall against attrition.
So we're talking about a kind of slow poison in the culture. The failure isn't some massive scandal. It's the quiet resignation, the gradual disengagement.
The apathy, that apathy that creeps into the team Zoom calls, leadership failure is really just the result of neglecting human capital.
Okay, so let's pivot a bit. Let's look at some foundational architects of influence that really demonstrate this relational priority. The sources draw heavily on historical models, offering them up as case studies, and they focus specifically on the leadership approach of Jesus.
Right.
What does that model reveal about intentional presence?
Well, it reveals that enduring authority flows from proximity, from shared life, not distance. This model was profoundly relational. He wasn't leading through, memos shouted from a mountaintop.
Right.
He led through intentional life-on-life investment. Transformation happened through shared existence. Walking, listening, correcting in private, encouraging publicly. The key insight is really encapsulated in that finding from Mark. He appointed 12 that they might be with him and that he might send them out to preach.
That sequence is vital.
It is. Being precedes doing.
Okay, let's translate that for, say, the modern executive. If being precedes doing, it means the leader's calendar should prioritize spending quality, unhurried time with high potential people.
Even if it delays the deliverable.
Exactly. It's about creating a shared context.
Precisely. It's the strategic value of that shared context. It means investing your most valuable resource, your time and your attention, into helping people wrestle with difficult decisions, mentoring them through failure, and just being present.
You build influence not when you delegate tasks.
No, but when you share the burden and the joy of the work.
This model also deeply values restoration after failure. The sources use the example of Peter's denial. But I want to challenge this idea of redemptive leadership. Isn't there a risk that constantly forgiving people just enables mediocrity?
That is the essential question, isn't it?
Where's the line between redemption and rigorous accountability?
See, redemptive leadership isn't about ignoring consequences. It's about decoupling accountability from permanent disqualification.
Okay.
When Peter failed, I mean, spectacularly, publicly, Jesus didn't shame him or fire him or put him on a performance improvement plan.
Right.
He restored him. Through a private conversation by the sea, reaffirming his calling, feed my sheep.
Yeah.
The lesson is that if you want future commitment, accountability has to be administered in a way that preserves dignity.
That distinction preserving dignity while delivering accountability, that's gold. And we see a complementary prototype in Barnabas, the son of encouragement.
Barnabas. He's a fascinating example of encouragement as a high-level strategy. He specialized in seeing potential that others just dismissed.
Like with Saul, who became Paul.
Exactly. The early community feared him. I mean, he had been their persecutor. He was a high-risk, high-liability asset. And Barnabas was the one who vouched for him, who bridged that gap between historical fear and future possibility.
He was the sponsor.
He was the sponsor, the connector, the person who made the career-defining introduction.
And what about John Mark?
Ah, yes. John Mark failed spectacularly on an early mission and went home. This led to a huge conflict between Barnabas and Paul. And Barnabas chose to take John Mark under his wing, to invest in him. He prioritized the human over mission efficiency.
And that choice was vindicated.
Completely vindicated. John Mark came back and wrote one of the most important narratives in history. Encouragement isn't weakness. It's a long-term strategic force.
That insight leads us straight into this fundamental choice at the heart of leadership failure: control versus covenant.
Right. The mindset that actively prevents building people is control. Control seeks compliance. It relies entirely on external motivators. Fear, punitive measures, transactional incentives. It just reduces people to resources.
And covenant.
Covenant seeks faithfulness. It's rooted in mutual commitment, in trust, in a shared identity, a belief that we are in this together. Leadership is meant to be covenantal, not transactional.
So when our sources say authority divorced from relationship is unfaithful to the divine pattern of stewardship, for our listeners in a secular business context, what does unfaithful stewardship mean practically?
It means you are wasting your most valuable asset. Stewardship is about maximizing potential for the future. If you only extract performance today without investing in the person, you're burning your capital.
So unfaithful stewardship is the high cost of talent attrition.
Yes, and the failure to produce a succession pipeline and creating a fragile culture that just collapses the moment external pressure hits. You're treating people like expendable widgets.
Let's use those historical case studies to illustrate this. Saul, for instance.
Consider Saul, a brilliant warrior, but he lacks relational security. His deep insecurity led to mistrust, paranoia, micromanagement.
A classic insecure CEO.
Totally. It isolated him from his key advisors, and his kingdom ultimately failed not because he lost a battle, but because he lost the loyalty of his inner circle.
And then there's Rehoboam.
Rehoboam. He inherited a thriving kingdom, but he refused to listen to the relational counsel from the elders. He chose harshness, arrogance, rigidity.
And the result was?
He fractured the entire nation into two. Leadership failure is rarely just strategic. It's relational and moral at its core. It leads to internal combustion.
The modern echo is clear. Misalignment, quiet resignation, a culture that no consultant can fix. But, okay, we've established relationship as the foundation, but this can't mean being passive. Hard conversations are still essential.
Absolutely. Healthy teams thrive where truth and grace are balanced, but correction without relationship is just control. It's punitive.
So how do you make it formative?
To actually help someone improve, correction has to preserve dignity, just like Jesus restoring Peter. The sources emphasize it has to be offered gently, often privately. When correction is embedded within a strong relational bond, it's received as an investment, not a condemnation.
Okay, so if we accept this, the path forward requires a shift. We need to stop seeing leadership as primarily directing and start seeing it as coaching.
That's the pivot.
It changes our core question from what tasks need to be accomplished to who is being formed under my influence.
That is the essential pivot. You move from an industrial model of resource extraction to a capacity building model. Coaching leaders create teams that think, that adapt, that own their work.
Because they've been empowered.
They feel seen, valued, and safe to take intellectual risks. Effective coaching is about drawing out their internal wisdom, not just depositing instructions.
So give us some powerful, actionable examples of coaching questions that foster that, rather than just dictating next steps.
Well, you want questions that shift ownership. So instead of asking, did you finish the report? You ask, what part of the report did you find most challenging, and what did you learn from tackling it?
Okay, I like that.
Or you shift from evaluation to empowerment. How can I support your growth in this role? Or what is one thing you can take ownership of next week that would stretch your skills? These questions immediately reframe the conversation to be about formation and partnership.
And that moves us right from theory into tools. The sources provide two structured mechanisms for this. Tool one is the relationship audit.
The relationship audit is an intentional, internal inventory of your human capital. It requires radical honesty. You can't outsource this.
So what's the goal?
The goal is to systematically identify who on your team is getting your high-value time and who's being managed remotely or through intermediaries. You move from assuming relationships are fine to knowing their exact health.
What are the key indicators we need to look for, especially when identifying unresolved tension?
Look for the silence. Unresolved tension often manifests as passive agreement in meetings or delayed responses to simple requests, a sudden lack of feedback. You have to ask yourself, when was the last time someone felt safe enough to genuinely challenge my strategy, not just agree with it? The two crucial audit questions for you, the listener, are, first, where is tension unresolved or unaddressed? And second, who on your team feels genuinely known, not merely managed?
That second question is key. A leader who manages a team gets tasks done efficiently. A leader who knows a team gets discretionary effort, loyalty, innovation.
Exactly. When you know someone, you know their aspirations, their family context, their greatest fears. Managing only requires that you know their KPIs.
And when things get tough,
The relationships you neglected will fail you, but the ones you invested in will carry you through. The audit forces you to allocate time to those neglected areas.
and tool two focuses on our most critical resource out, time, the rhythms of presence.
This stresses consistency over intensity. Relational trust is not built through one expensive offsite retreat a year. It's built through small, consistent, intentional practices. So we highly recommend establishing a rhythm of weekly intentional check-ins. Brief, maybe 10-minute conversations, focused entirely on presence and curiosity.
So how is a 10-minute check-in different from a typical status meeting?
The status meeting is about deliverables. An intentional check-in is about the person. You explicitly block time, and you start by asking about them, not the task.
Like what?
You might ask, what are you excited about this week? Or what's weighing you down that I should know about? The goal is to create a pattern of safe communication. This rhythm communicates value and, crucially, allows small tensions to surface early, preventing major conflicts.
Or that quiet resignation we talked about.
Or the quiet resignation, precisely.
This requires patience, consistency, and a massive dose of humility. We've covered a tremendous amount today.
We have. In summary, I think the transformation we're looking for is leadership that builds people. That's what multiplies influence far beyond a leader's immediate tenure. And this discipline, it requires patience, courage, humility, and what the sources call agape, love leadership, as a form of love in action.
Patient, kind, not self-seeking.
Exactly. A commitment to the other person's flourishing.
Ultimately, influence isn't measured by visible outcomes on a spreadsheet. It's measured by transformation. The focus is on whether the people who reported to you are better because you led.
Did they grow in capacity?
Yeah.
Did they flourish in confidence? That is a lasting legacy.
So if leadership that prioritizes presence and relational formation is the only model that really aligns with effective stewardship and ensures a lasting legacy.
How will you reshape your allocation of time and attention this week to focus on the person you need to form rather than just the task you need to execute?